this week with Mike Beech on the podcast. Mike Beech is former co-owner of Hate Brand Goods, is now a co-owner at Throwbros. Besides that, he was the National Lightweight Highland Games Champion. He's an entrepreneur. He's a mixed martial artist. He's a hunter. He's got about 1 million irons in the fire. So this was a great interview. We were talking down at the Arnold, so you can hear some noise in the background. But check this one out. I think you're really going to enjoy the conversation. We got into some real geeky tips and technique talk on Highland Games, but we talked about everything, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy it.
I'm not in anything controversial, and I tend to say what I mean, so usually...
So it'll be good.
Yeah.
All right, we are in Columbus, Ohio, again, at the Arnold Classic, the world's biggest freak show, with Mike Beech from Throwbros.
Yeah, man, it is... freak show is the correct word. I'm happy to be a sideshow.
Yeah.
A sideshow to the freak show, but yeah, I mean, look, man, we got Highland Games here. We've had it for 2 years, 3 years straight now, 2 years straight now.
Magnus for Magnus and just walk behind you.
And that's the beauty of being here. That is the crazy thing.
Right.
Like walking in last night, I'm just walking in to get my stuff set up for the booth and everything. And I walked past that huge badass Conan's bill that they have.
Yeah, right. It's like 20,000 pounds ridiculous. Or something.
And it's one of those things that was like walking like, you know when you're on the Vegas Strip and you see the huge buildings out there.
Right.
You're like, oh, that's not too far away.
Right.
Like I walked that 6 miles later and you're still walking. It's the same thing, like it kind of snuck up on me. I was like, oh, I won't be at that thing in a while. Because it's across the entire thing. And I walk and all of a sudden I'm next to it. Just this monstrous implement.
So they don't have it like up on the main stage or anything?
No, I think it's too much for that.
Right.
I think it's too much.
Huge.
But they got it in I think where they're doing a lot of the Armstrong Man, I think that's where they have it.
Got it.
And I walk by, and of course I'm like, my mind's blown by the thing, and then I look, and Shaw's standing there looking at it.
Yeah.
And a couple of the other guys are all standing there looking at it, and they're all kind of doing the same thing that all the normal humans are doing.
Right.
We're like, how do we do that?
I saw guys pushing it forward and then trying to turn around backwards and pushing it with their backs.
Yeah.
And that's what's great about strongman, though. You know, you never know what you're going to get.
Oh, yeah. And the puzzle is part of it for those guys, which I love because, I mean, it's the same thing. They've got to figure out that exact, and I like that because you can see it on Shaw's face. I can't remember who else is out there now that it's been a day and I've slept since then, but you can see there's like a calculus in their head.
Right.
Like they're not just there to gawk.
Right.
Like they're seeing it and they're putting it together. I mean, it's just like a quarterback looking at an offense. It's like looking at printouts
Sure,
in between.
right.
It's the same thing. Like he's trying to put together the pieces because when it's go time, the more he has figured out, the better. So.
Right. Yeah. And we talked to Magnus about that when we did a podcast with him where, back in the day, that's how all the events were.
You didn't know
you didn't know what was going on. You didn't know some of the stuff's never been lifted by a human before, know. And they show up and, okay, you're going to lift these lobster traps over your head or whatever,
Sometimes there's people on it.
Right.
Like that's straight up, we're measuring people weight.
They're throwing caber in the water and things like that, which is crazy. But you were saying, we've got, finally, I think we've got not that the first Highland Games attempt they made wasn't legitimate. It was very legitimate, but it's March in Ohio. It just wasn't going to work outdoors.
Yeah, you got one good showing out of that.
Yep.
It didn't snow the day the pros were out.
Right.
And that was the year that Matt won.
Right.
Like he closed it out with a 17-foot wob to win in that weather.
Gamer.
I said it back then, by the way. 17 in those conditions is clutch.
Yes.
That's big.
Yep.
And I mean, he's not known as a wob guy.
No.
But he closed it out.
That's what I always have said, and I've thrown against the best of the best, and Matt was the most athletic guy I ever threw against, bar none. He wasn't big, he wasn't the strongest, he was just way more athletic than everybody else.
Yep, and he's got that switch, man, that a lot of athletes do, which I talked about with him when he and I would travel around, sometimes I would see him compete, and sometimes he would just, like one time the time I'm thinking about is at Reebok Record Breakers, where he just kind of went and deadlifted, just to have fun, and I saw him because we're running a table there at the same time, and he's joking around with a lot of the super training guys, just shooting the shit and everything back there, and then once they call his name and they say he's up,
switch
you just see the switch.
Yeah.
And I love it. I grew up with that. Like I grew up around athletes, and I've grown up around all levels of athletes, and like seeing people that have that switch.
Yeah.
to where, there's a lot of athletes that need to be really, really focused in and dialed for a long period of time, need to be in their headphones, they need to be in their
Right.
own head for a while and get there. But some people just, and some of it's practice for sure.
Yeah.
Some of that is for sure practice, but they just have that pop, that ability to just get into that area and go. That's a skill in
They used to
itself.
talk about Chuck Liddell, and he would be like basically taking a nap.
Yeah.
And then they'd start his music. They'd say, "Hey, it's time to go. Let's go."
Uh-huh.
But I can kind of get that because I was never one of those guys who had the headphones on, or I just if that was what was happening, man, I think I'd be more tense that way. I got to be dicking around and making fun of people and having a good time and
Well, what kind of sports did you play growing up? This is always my question here. What did you-
everything. So started out with soccer and swimming, and then a lot of wrestling, football, and then got into track and field and Highland Games the same year. So
Yeah.
when I was 16.
So my feel about that is honestly, my feeling about that is, I think a lot of people, when you look at Highland Games athletes, there are a lot of them played team sports for a long time. We played every sport growing up. We probably played football, a lot of us played baseball, all the team sports and everything. And there's a certain obviously camaraderie, but there's a certain I hate to use the word because it's so corporate sounding, but there's a synergy to being with a group of people that are all chasing the same goal.
Yeah.
And you find that the ability to float in and out of dicking around and joking around with each other, talking, whatever, and then get into serious mode, you get really fluid with that.
Yes.
And I
yeah.
find a lot of Highland Games athletes have that, and I think the reason a lot of us like it is because we get the feel of a team sport because we're all out there. Nobody's too serious. And
Right.
if they are, they get called out for
Oh
it real
yeah,
quick.
absolutely.
But we're all out there as an individual sport, but there's a very much a team feel to it.
Yeah.
And there's that, nobody's dialed in, back, in the warm-up area of a powerlifting mode, the head down,
Right.
getting in their head. Everybody's just screwing around. It's like,
Yep.
oh, it's my turn. All right, go. And I think that's what draws a lot of people. I've just noticed a trend that, track and field guys, some of the people that I've known, the aforementioned, take it too seriously.
Yeah.
A lot of guys who just did track fall into that because they're used to the whole experience being about what's happening with them.
And we used to get that. So some new pro would show up, and a lot of times the line on him would be, he's a track guy.
Yes.
And it would take a season for them to realize, oh, I'm not going to have any friends in this sport, and it's going to be a miserable time unless I dial it in. And I think it wasn't that they were dicks. They were just used to everyone being like that.
Yeah.
And when someone's dicking around with you, they're not trying to get in your head. They're just having fun because they got to do this every single weekend for the whole summer. You
Right.
know? And they dial it in and they figure it out. And
Yeah, and they're used to being on, if you go to a track meet anywhere and you watch, those guys are on an island a lot of times.
yes. Yeah.
I mean, you watch the last Olympics, you watch Kovac and Krauser. Those guys know each other really well.
Yep.
Look how much they talk in between throws.
Yep.
They don't.
Right.
There's maybe an acknowledgement, maybe a chat real quick, but they're not sitting there shooting the shit.
Right. Yeah.
It's just a different world they came from. But yeah, you're right. You won't survive that long.
And I think that's the great part about Highland Games in general is that we know it's a show.
Yeah.
At least you better know it's a show.
You should.
Especially when you're trying to make money, because if you don't give them a show, then that money doesn't show up the next year.
Right.
And you got to make sure you're giving the people what they want. And when it comes down to it, we're all just dicking around and trying to entertain people. And I think that's what's great about it. It's not too serious, but we all took it serious when we were going hard.
When it's time to throw, when it's time to train,
Right.
You take it seriously. I mean, you take the training seriously.
Yeah.
And I think you should if you want to go anywhere with the sport. If you want to show up and you want to put the kilt on and you just want to feel it and have fun with it, I'm never going to judge that guy.
Yeah.
I used to. I really did.
I did too. I did.
I used to judge that person, and that's funny you say that because I remember that your rant that you did way back when.
I still get shit for that.
But it's okay. You said a lot of things that I think a lot of people were thinking, and but one of those things was some people need to be spectators and some people need to be participants.
I still believe that.
I do too.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with you. The guy that comes out and throws, if he throws the B group, throws in the novices once in a while, and he wants to get out there and do it. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
It's no skin off my hide. If
Sure.
he wants personal advice, I'm going to tell him either take it seriously or find something you can. But
Yeah.
I'm fine with it. But if you're going to take it seriously and you want to get better at it, you got to take the training seriously.
Yeah.
You have to. I've met very few people that had no athletic background coming into this, and so the people that do, they kind of have to get back to that mode where they might have been in their 20s and their teens, of take the training seriously. Don't kill yourself, but take the training seriously.
Right.
And it's a weird contrast when you think about it, that we have this ridiculous sport.
Yeah.
It's silly.
Yeah.
It's just totally silly.
Yep.
It is a sideshow, just like we talked about. But we train seriously for it.
Yeah, and that was always you get track guys who would come in and go, well, I don't have to. I don't have to train as hard as I did in track. Yeah, maybe, but you better train fucking hard because these guys are going to thump you.
And you got 9 events, homeboy.
Yep. Yeah. So here's a caver. Figure out what to do with that.
Yep. So a couple of the people that I coach are track athletes, and reliably, like you said, the line on them, they're a track athlete. Stone, they're going to do fine.
Yep.
They've thrown it a few times. They're going to do just fine. Weights, depending on what they threw, they're probably going to be fine. If they have discus or hammer, they know how to move their feet. They're going to be just fine. Even hammer, they'll probably get okay. Let's get into caber. Let's get into sheep. Let's get into wob and see how weird it gets.
It used to be before, and I came into this sport in 1991, so you didn't
as a
have,
master in 91.
Yeah, pretty much. So you didn't have all-arounders. Yeah. So you get guys who are really good at the first 3 events, and then you get guys who are good at the last 3 events, and it was just how you placed in your bad events that you did well, and then you started to get guys like Ryan Vieira who could do everything.
Top to bottom.
Yeah. And
that's the progression
change
of a sport. That's the evolution of a sport.
Yep.
And that's the move from sideshow to sport.
Well, I said, all right, the first World Championships I remember was the winning throw in the 56 for distance was 37 feet.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? How far has it come?
That's not even that's not really a top pro. That's not a top pro number.
I don't think you should turn pro unless you throw 40.
Well, if
you're not going to win anything.
No, you're not. But if you're going to be at a games like this, especially, and I put this on that. I say if you want to be a pro that travels.
Right. Yeah, sure.
The East Coast is a different ball game than we have
here.
They've got a lot more pro games. They've got a lot more variation in their
That's true.
pros.
I never really threw like in Texas or Oklahoma or any of those places. There was just no games.
Texas is a wasteland for pros.
Yeah.
Now. But like the East Coast, in the Carolinas, they've got a festival every weekend.
Right.
And they got pro classes to fill. And I get it, but if you're going to be a pro that's going to travel and that's going to make an impact, that's going to win, I think 40-80 is the norm.
Yeah.
I think that has to be now.
Yeah.
It 100% has to be. It's funny you mentioned the 2 types of specialists of throw, not specialists so to speak, but there's people that are good in one half, not good in the other.
Right.
I've always typified that as, and I kind of always look at things from the coaching perspective, honestly. Like there are throwers in this sport that are good when they get to move their feet, and there are throwers that are good when they don't have to move their feet.
Yep.
And there's a huge difference. Strength has a lot to do with it, honestly. The more horsepower you have, the better your wob and sheaf could be.
Yeah.
But not always.
Right.
It's really not always the case. It's just some people, like me, if I can move my feet, I can throw way better.
Yeah.
But once I have to stand still, I got to trudge through. But there's definitely those 2 types of athletes. But it is insane to see, starting with Vieira and moving on to the modern class of pros that we have now, that you have guys at the top who can legitimately run the table on other pros.
Yeah.
Spencer can have a day where he could run the table, depending on who the hammer throwers are in the group.
Right.
He could run the table on everybody.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that he has, and I know that there's been glitches like the not being able to do the Canadian games and everything, but it's amazing to me that he doesn't have a world championship yet.
He's going to rack them up once it gets cleared. I mean, he has to.
It's insane to me that it hasn't happened,
Yeah.
And he was, and I know his hammers aren't the best, but
they're still elite.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, it's amazing to me that he didn't catch one when Matt and Dan were still throwing, because he was right in the game right there.
The thing, I've known Spencer a long time now, and since he was an AM, we used to train together way back when, and you couldn't tell by watching me throw, but we used to train together. Matt and Andy, when we talked about Spencer, it would always be like Spencer's ability to throw things can't be questioned.
Right.
His ability to throw shit far can't be questioned. The consistency to do it all throughout a year and show up in a games and do it for all 9 events is what he needs.
Right.
Is where he has to be. And the second he decided a few years back, I'm not going to worry about losing weight. I'm not going to worry about anything else besides getting stronger and throwing farther.
Yeah.
And mostly getting stronger, all of a sudden starts coming together. He's got that reserve strength. He's got that tank to go on now.
I don't know if you heard the interview we did with Kerry Overfeld a couple weeks ago. We were all drunk, but that was one of the things he talked about was, Spencer thought that his weight for height was some magical technique thing. And he's like, you have a 700-pound speed deadlift,
He pulled 805 faster than I pull 315. Wow. I mean, it was nuts, man. Like that was, by the way, I don't know if anybody's seen that on Instagram yet, but Spencer pulling 805 will make you want to quit lifting.
Right, yeah.
It's just, okay. It took you how long after you really decided to get after it to get to 805? Yeah, but you're absolutely right. Spencer does talk a lot about the technique of WOB, but there's an underlying, I think you're right, there has to be an underlying assumption. Kerry's right. There's an underlying assumption of you need horsepower to make it go.
You need horsepower. And that was one of the things we always tried to stress, that you needed an overabundance of it. You know, you couldn't just be strong enough, because you're going to throw every weekend, and there's going to be days where you're going to feel like shit.
Yep.
And you still have to have that in reserve, just in case your technique's off or something's not going right. It's got to be there.
Right. If you can miss one in the open stone, if you can miss one and still throw 52.
Yeah, right.
Or if it's a bad track or you're hurt and you can stand a 50.
Yep.
I mean, that travels.
Yep.
It's like the same thing I say, like, I think everybody should have, rotational throwers should have at least some familiarity with a glide or shuffle or be comfortable standing.
Yeah.
Because the glide travels, man.
Oh yeah, I've jumped back to a standing throw a million times. Either the ground was shit or I just wasn't moving right, and I know I could throw this far in the stand, so I just go to it.
If you get in a dogfight with somebody in the class and you need the extra foot, okay,
Right.
Whip it out, give it a shot, even if you're off.
Yep.
But if you know where you're going to stand, just stand and throw it.
Yeah.
Use that reserve strength. But yeah, it's a huge part of it, man. Like, you know, like you said, technique is going to. With this sport, you have to remember. This was something that Matt said to me a long time ago when I was really first getting into it, and he was an AM too. Was that you do have to be strong to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though compared to what you lift in the gym, 56, 28, 42, whatever you're throwing, isn't very heavy, it's still heavy to throw.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be strong to do it. If you're not, there's a wall you're never going to break.
Yeah. You're never gonna be able to do the technique properly.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you should try for strength if you're capable of it, no matter what.
Sure.
But especially if you're doing the Highland Games.
Yeah. Strength sport.
And then after that, it's a strength sport.
Yeah.
That's right. And then start worrying about your technique. Worry about how you get those edges here and now, stuff like that. But, you know, if you can't throw the weight over bar 10 feet, it's not how you're reaching back.
Yes, absolutely. Right.
That's just not the case. But it's again, the evolution is just insane to me, to be talking about, you know, like that class of pros, what used to be like, we had this conversation recently too, that 16 used to be kind of like okay, a lot of competitions end at 16.
Yeah.
A lot end at 16. And now on Sunday, we got Spencer Tyler throwing weight over bar against the strongest man in the world, which is insane to me.
You know,
19 feet is what we're shooting at.
Right, yeah. And I talked to Steve Pulcinella about this last year after he did it last year, and he was like, remember when all I had to do was, you know, Steve had gone 18, but all he had to do was hit 17, you know, or maybe 16.6, and he would win any competition he was in. He didn't even have to really go after it, you know. Yeah. And now, you know, there these guys who, and I still would consider Spencer a technical thrower who's incredibly fast. He's not, you know, I know his weight for height is humongous, but that's not how I would look at him, like a strong man, like Thor throwing it. You know, you give Thor a 28, he's fucked, you know.
Right, yeah. No, he'll miss it.
Right, yeah. And the other thing with Spencer is, I did a Highland Games clinic this year, and I had a bunch of these guys coming out, and they all wanted to know about Spencer.
Yeah.
How does Spencer do it? Well, let me tell you how fucking Spencer does it. He does it the way Spencer does it.
Correct.
Don't you try to emulate that. He's probably screwed this up and sat out in that field and shook his head and been pissed off at himself, and then figured out, oh, this is how I need to do it to throw it far.
It's like any other skill, any other thing that you try to acquire. If you are practiced enough and you've seen enough, you can watch Spencer. You and I can watch Spencer and see that there are universal things happening within that throw that everybody should be doing.
Right.
There's no change.
Right.
Like, there's things that you should be doing universally in that throw. And if you can find those things, emulate Spencer.
Right.
Because emulating Spencer means turning your right foot and being patient, is what it means. That's your emulation.
Come down to the very basics of everybody's
Right. Now, if you want to start off at the back of the trig sideways, then you need to have that speed that he has. Then you need to have, you need to create the kind of rotation and drive that he does after one.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you have to have. He's doing that to accommodate his personal skill set on top of the fundamentals.
Right.
But Spencer spends more time on the fundamentals, has spent more time on the fundamentals than most of us spend in the sport.
Yeah.
And also, there's a large track and field background.
Yep.
So those things are ingrained a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, he gets and a lot of elite athletes get irritated by this. Like, well, I'm not like you. Well, it's true, you're not. You don't have those skills. But I still have 2 arms. This is Bruce Lee, straight up. Until a person, there's a new type of person that has more than 2 arms and 2 legs, there's some things that are fundamentally going to stay the same.
Sure.
Whether it's self-defense, whether it's throwing, anything else. There are some things fundamentally that you have to do with your body built the way it is. So if you can look at any elite thrower, any elite athlete, and you can find those things in the middle somewhere, that's what you need to focus on.
Yes.
But that's not flashy.
Right.
And it's not cool to watch. Everybody likes it when LeBron hits the shots from half court. Nobody gets excited when he takes 300 free throws.
Right. Right.
That's what he's really doing.
Yeah. That's I always tell people that I threw way above my potential.
Yeah.
Out of pure hatred of losing and just willingness to hurt more than the next guy. I was willing to train harder than the next guy. I'm 5'11". I don't have any kind of track and field pedigree, but I really wanted to throw far, and I threw far enough to make it to the places like the Celtic Classic where I wanted to get to. I had no illusions that I was going to win a world championship or even get invited to a world championship.
Yeah, but we're an experience, man.
Exactly. And I think that's what people need to look at is where am I at and how do I get to the next level and then the next level and the next level. You don't start off as a C-class amateur and try to emulate Matt Vincent and then think you're just going to end up there, because I see a lot of people doing his techniques too, where that's what made Matt good. It's not necessarily going to make you good.
Right.
Look at the 99% and see what they're doing, and talk about the things you were just talking about. Driving to the trig, working your right foot, being patient. That's what you need to look at.
And those are there in any high level athlete's technique. Those things, you can't make them go away. And I do think that Matt, I learned from, honest to goodness, it pains me to say it, but I learned the Highland Games by watching Matt.
Yeah.
I did. I learned from watching him. And to my detriment at times, because he was one of the best doing it, if not the best doing it at that time. And there are some great things. What is neat about Matt, and this is, I steal this from Spencer, is that what is great about him is that some of his techniques, like stone and weights especially, he has some of the most classic technique of any of the newer pros, like in a lot of ways. Like he really, there's not a lot of tomfoolery going on.
Right.
There's, he does a couple of things here and there that if you got a good eye for it, you can see. But it's not about his setup. His setup's very classic.
Right.
It's not about his finish. His finish is very classic.
Yep.
He's got great stuff going in the middle. Best footwork that I've ever seen.
Yes.
Greatest footwork I've ever seen in a Highland Games athlete.
The thing he does differently though is he has a shallow landing of his left foot. At the front of the trig. And when I left the sport and came back 3 years later, everyone was trying to emulate that. I said, he does that on purpose because it triggers his right hip to come over there. Your right hip isn't moving. So now you're just throwing everything off to your right.
Right.
Because you don't have the athletic ability to turn that right foot hard, get your right hip over to the left, and get the ball out into sectors.
Right.
He
so
did
give
that
yourself
on
a better
purpose.
chance. Give yourself a better chance and do it the right way.
Right.
Or do it the classic way.
The other thing he brought into the sport that no one was doing outside of Peter Goodmanson was a full spin. With the stone. Everyone was South African. When I left the sport, I came back 3 years later, everyone was doing a full spin.
I had my romantic getaway with the full spin for a while. I tried it for a little bit, and then I went to the MSA. I went to the modified South African, and then I realized that that's cool, but I throw farther more consistently just gliding.
Yeah.
And for anybody, that's what most of us should be doing.
Honestly. I came back. I was a South African thrower. I came back and. Just due to getting older and injuries, is I couldn't move my right foot the way I used to be able to move my right foot, so I went to a glide and then just slammed that hip up and over as hard as I could.
All it is, you just need a rolling start into the throw. That's all you need.
Yeah, right.
None of us are throwing 22 meters, so what are we doing?
Yeah.
Well, it's one of 9 events. Just get out there, do the thing that gets it out there farthest consistently.
Yep.
Have I hit were bombs for me with rotational? Yes. But can I do that every Saturday?
Right.
No.
Right. And that's you have to be able to recreate that in the highest pressure situations, in shitty weather, on wet grass, after you've been out drinking all night, whatever. You have to be able to reproduce that. So go with the technique that's going to get you there the most often.
Yeah, in terms of technique, again, anybody that I coach or anybody that I give advice to, like, I tell them first, like, I think I say something about this in the book Heavy Light. I say that every band when they start out is a cover band, because that's all you've been doing is you've been watching the people that are good or doing what you want to do. You've been watching them, so you start playing their songs, and you master things in that, and you figure out your tricks, you figure out the technique, you figure out your finger placement, how you hold your sticks when you drum, you figure all this stuff out, how you play together, you figure all this stuff out being a cover artist, and then one day you think like, I got an idea for a song.
Yeah.
This is the same process. It seems so many worlds apart, but I talk about all the time that the gaining of every skill in life, every practice, every discipline is pretty much gotten the same way. And this is one part of it, is that you start off as a cover band.
Yep.
And so you start off, you watch those great throwers, you watch those great athletes, and you try to, you want to emulate them, you try to get in there, but you try to find like the basics, you try to find the chord structure, right? Or you try to find what your feet should be doing. And then once you emulate enough of them, it's like, I know some tricks now. What do I want to do in there? When my throwing got better, and I could generalize it to all my ridiculous hobbies that I have. When I really started taking a step up and becoming a good, I say with air quotes, thrower, a better thrower.
You were a national champion. Let's not. I mean, come on. You were good.
Yeah. Thank you. So when I made that turn, I realized like, hey, I need to throw like me.
Right.
I need to do this like me now, because there's nobody else that's like built exactly like me. There's nobody that thinks the way that I do, that has my athletic background. There's nobody that does it. Okay, the stuff in the middle. Know all the stuff, the baseline stuff. The biggest part of the distribution of the bell curve.
Yes.
You got most of that down. Now start tweaking it to make it yours. Don't make it look cool. Don't make it, don't make it so it makes you feel awesome or anything like that. What works for you? And that's when things start really taking off.
That's a great analogy, the cover band. I like that a lot. It's a perfect way to look at that as you're starting off, and just be that best cover band you can be until you learn enough to make changes on your own.
Yeah, but don't try to cover King Crimson.
Right.
Like try to cover Nirvana.
Right.
Start off being that cover band, and that's where a lot of people get wrong.
Yes.
Like you're talking about, they want to step in and do all the cool shit first.
Yeah.
Like, well, you don't have the skills to do that. And what's funny is if you ask somebody, like if you ask a guitar player that's just starting out, you said, hey, play me an arpeggio. They go, what?
Yeah.
Like, they wouldn't know what you're talking about. But okay, work on a power chord then, man. But if you get into a sport, everybody wants to swing a bat like Miggy, or they want to,
It's that white belt mentality. And I just took up the sport of jiu-jitsu.
Oh, that's rad, man.
And it's such the way I looked at it was, I mean, by the time this comes out, I will have already made my announcement at Dunedin that I'm signed up to throw at Dunedin. I've got a little bit of an injury now that I can't train at all, so I'm probably not going to throw there.
You're retired, man.
Well, yeah. So what I'm looking at, though, is I started to look at this after I decided, well, shit, I'm not going to be able to train. I'm going to give this space to somebody else. But I started to look at it and go, last year I was out on the field, and I threw a 77-foot lightweight.
Nice.
And I thought to myself, wow, that's really good. And then about 30 seconds later, I said, yeah, but my PR is over 86.
Right.
And I'm never going to get,
you can't
on my
do that to
best
yourself,
day,
man.
I'm never going to get back to that. And I started to think, so the rest of my career, no matter how hard I train, I'm going to be throwing at a level that I'm not going to be happy with, even though in the back of my head I always know that's a different age.
That's an animal you can't chase.
Right. But with jiu-jitsu, every time I go to class, I get better. Every single time I get better. And the way I've gone into it is I'm a white belt. And I'm just going to learn every day, and the blue belts are going to beat the shit out of me and, choke me out. I got bruises on my arm, my lips all fucked up, and I'm just going to take it until I'm a blue belt. And then I'm going to beat the fuck out of the white belts,
Well, yeah, but then you start rolling with purple belts all of a sudden,
right.
and
So,
I'm getting strangled again.
Right now, I'm just an assassin with the white belts in my class. The blue belts are beating the crap out of me. I'm a lot stronger than they are.
But the blue belts probably aren't as strong as you, but
and they know exactly what to do with me.
Are like, oh, guy that's going to use his strength?
Yep.
Cool, I got him.
But I sit there and I watch the purple belts come down and just choke the fuck out of them, So I'm like, all right, so this is something I can do and just progress slowly for the rest of my life. And it doesn't matter how long it takes me to get to, black belt, because there's no pressure and there's no money. And it's just something I do 2 or 3 times a week for myself,
And there's the thing that people, martial arts in general, and jiu-jitsu especially, it's like a fractal. Like it never gets less complicated.
Yes.
The further you get down, and I think you're always going to hit, like I talked about, any endeavor, anything that you get into, you're going to hit the same walls all throughout. But the levels of complexity when you add an opponent, that's always why I've been drawn to the martial arts. That's why, in addition to throwing and lifting, like I'm training Muay Thai, and I came from a fencing background.
No, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I always, whenever I'm here, I try to walk by the hall to see. I've competed here a couple times.
No shit.
Yeah. Yeah, way back when I got too old for it. I was getting beat by kids that were 14 years old, so I politely stepped away. But yeah, I was doing that on a national level for a while, and it was really after baseball, it was my next great love of a sport. I did it for over a decade, and but there's so much complexity that comes into when you add an opponent.
Right.
There's a lot of complexity in throwing, but it's inward. And you can always find more there, but like it multiplies by orders of magnitude when you add an opponent to it.
Yes.
Because there's an unplanned actor involved in the whole thing. So I think you're right. With jiu-jitsu, like my experience has been you're always going to hit that same wall. You're going to hit that same wall that you always do, where like everything's going great for you, like it is right now as a white belt. You're learning every time. You're grabbing stuff. You're getting it, and you're an athlete, so it's going to come even better. It's going to be really rewarding. And then right around the time you get the blue belt, I bet, or when you're getting close to it, nothing's going to work anymore.
Right.
And you're going to think, oh God, what is, like, am I just getting too old? I don't have a talent for this, what it is. But I always forget it too until I have to sit down and remind myself, is that once you start getting better, you start solving harder problems.
Sure.
And then you suck again.
Yeah.
And then you suck again.
Yeah.
Like it's just like in throwing. It's like, oh man, I just had a big breakthrough. I'm throwing the stone 3 feet further than I've ever thrown it consistently. Shit, my weights just fell off.
Yeah, right.
Or it's the same thing. And that's 9 events, but you're going to eventually have to start solving higher level problems.
Right.
Especially in jiu-jitsu. And in jiu-jitsu and in Muay Thai, those problems become higher level people.
Right.
And they'll make you feel like, man, I got a bag of tricks that are supposed to work, and none of these fucking work anymore.
It's funny going up because all the tricks I have work on the white belts who have all the same tricks I have. But when you go to the blue belts, like, oh, I know the counter for that. And then all of a sudden you're choking, I mean, it's just...
All of a sudden you're swept.
Yeah, and I just keep saying, it's funny because Paul, he's a 2-time national champion, and we've had him on the podcast. He's a very religious man, and I'm not quiet. So when I get swept, you'll hear me say, fuck, all the time. And I just feel so bad for him because it just comes out naturally, and sorry, Paul. Didn't mean to say that.
Yeah. Well, if you could make me better, maybe I wouldn't lose so much.
Damn,
Paul.
it's all his fault.
Yeah.
Can't possibly be
together,
mine.
Paul. No, I'm really stoked that you're getting into jiu-jitsu. I feel like that's a great natural progression for athletes as they get into the autumn of their career, as you and I are getting into. I feel like that's a great progression because it really tickles all those parts of your athlete brain.
Right.
It really does, and it's gentle enough to where it's not going to tear you apart. Throwing is super destructive once you get good at it.
What I found was when I came back to the sport, especially the first year I came back, I was still 260, 265. I had all this horsepower, but I hadn't thrown anything in 3 years, and the technique literally would just rip me apart.
Right.
Shit that never would have hurt before. The thing I'm dealing with is this thing I hurt the first year I came back, where I was throwing the hammer, and my marks were, I was throwing the heavy hammer just over 100, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to go in and win a Masters World Championship my first year. And then I went out to practice one day and just ripped something off the front of my leg.
Yep.
And now that night I've got a big lump on my thigh, and it's the same problem I'm still having. And it's just like, there's a reason why that's a young man's game.
100%. And, this is something, again, going back to, kind of the way that I train and program people is, in my book, I have what's, to a lot of people, a startlingly low amount of volume for throwing. And I put a caveat in there that if you're new, just throw as much as you need to, because you can't really hurt yourself enough because you don't create enough horsepower.
Right.
But as you get up to that upper amateur level and you think about wanting to be a pro, or if you already have track background, you got to throw full throws a lot less than you think you do.
Yes.
You need to, in the off season, the deep off season, I program people to throw maybe 3 or 4 fulls at all. Just so you don't forget how to do it.
Sure.
Because exactly what you're saying. There's so much horsepower behind what you're doing And it's not even, maybe even if there's not horsepower, you can be so efficient with the way you move to recruit muscle. You recruit so much more muscle. Like you and I, compared to a guy that's doing his third or fourth games, we're recruiting so much more.
Yes.
That's just the way this whole thing works.
Yep.
You're recruiting so much more muscle that it is more destructive.
Yeah.
So you know how to throw. Spencer knows how to throw. You know how to throw by this point. So let's do all the other stuff that supports that instead. And that had to be a huge wake-up call for you to oh, I don't need to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't need to throw that. I need to make sure that the vehicle that I'm putting it in has got good shocks.
Yeah.
And it can handle the load.
What's nice about throwers today is they have things like, mobility. What the hell was that?
It was not a thing until I was like 35.
Right.
Yeah.
We didn't know anything about that or how to take care of ourselves.
Do a couple arm circles before, you're good.
And the thing I see about the pros now is when we were pros, we were all big fat guys. Because, and not to say anything bad, Ryan Vera was one of the best that ever lived. But Ryan preached that. You had to be super heavy, and you had to have this low center of gravity, and you had to be a big fat guy and eat all his food. So we all did that. So we all looked just like Ryan Vieira. And now everybody looks like underwear models. They're all svelte and ripped. And,
Zolk, man.
Right.
Zolk's happy to rip his shirt off. He's got to be the first Highland Games athlete ever to be happy to rip his shirt off.
The best, though, was we were in Nova Scotia one time. I think I've told this before on the podcast. We're in Nova Scotia, and it's me and my wife and Matt. And Matt and Zolk are in the last round of the Wait for Height. And we all know that the shirt's coming off for the crowd. Right. So Matt looks over at me and Aaron and goes, should I take my shirt off? Because he's going first. And we're like, you absolutely should. And Matt, at this time,
this is 285 Matt.
This was humongous fat Matt.
Yeah.
And he rips his shirt off. And he's got this big white fish belly and big man tits.
So pale.
And the crowd just went wild. And Zolk didn't know what to do. He was like, oh, man. Stole my move. He couldn't possibly do it now, But it was great.
And Zolk's the guy that's in shape, so he looks like a bigger douchebag.
Right.
If he does it after that.
Right.
Like, oh, yeah?
Right.
What's this?
Steiger did it to him once in Edam Claw too. It just ruined his day, It was good. It's good. Just jam it in there a little bit.
Just thinking about the look on Zolkowitz's face.
Yeah.
That's what makes me happy. just to see Zolk a little disappointed is really all that makes me happy.
What's funny is Zolk is one of those guys who he was right above me in like the Celtic. He would always be like one or two spots ahead of me. So I was always trying to catch him. But I always threw when I looked at those guys, those are the guys I thought about in the off season. It was like, I'm hunting this motherfucker.
Those are your dartboard guys, yeah.
And you start to dislike them. And then when I retired from the sport and got out of the pro level, I was like, why did I not like Zolk? There's no reason not to like Zolk. He was just better than I was,
Weird how that works.
And it was just a revelation that came with a lot of people. That was like, oh, I really do like this guy. He was just better than me, and I was chasing him down. It was really hard to distinguish what was competitiveness and what was I actually don't like this person.
And see, you mentioned earlier that's what made you a pro. And you were exiting the sport right as I was coming in. But I've heard plenty of stories, and that intensity and that fire and that somewhat kind of dislike of things that aren't you getting better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like anything around that, or you fed on that. You needed that.
Yep.
Because, like you said, maybe not the most physically gifted, maybe not
Right.
the most talented, no background in it.
Yep.
You got to have something.
Yeah.
Like you're the boxer's equivalent of a puncher's chance. Like you can take a lot of punishment. You're durable.
And I would fuck shit up. I would go to the Celtic Classic and hit some big Braemar stone and fuck everything up.
Like
for the
you
people.
flip the table around.
Yep. And that was fun for me.
I always love that. My favorite thing has always been when I was throwing A class was to fuck things up. Is to go to a place where nobody know I'd thrown women before when I started to travel, and I'm not. In a field of Highland Games athletes that are AA amateurs, I'm not imposing looking at all. It's like this guy must have just won his first B game.
Right.
And I always loved the stone, and I always focused a lot on the Braemar stone for just what you're talking about. Because when you get to that M level and up, you're throwing traditional order a lot.
Yeah.
And to be able to pop out a 36 at my size in the amateurs, like all of a sudden people that don't know you, like they're looking at the board, and they're looking around like, who is?
I love making them look at the board. Yeah.
Like, so I enjoy that. And I always like the stones for that reason too. Like I got that. But having guys that are way bigger and way stronger, that are a lot of times we've talked about that, you can, honest to goodness, in this sport, you can get to that amateur A level being very, very strong and not really knowing how to throw. You can. It's fine. I really enjoyed beating those guys.
Yeah.
That was really fun. But yeah, it's you feed on that a little bit. You feed. I'm not a big like underdog mentality guy. Like I'm very happy-go-lucky, pretty just pleased with who I am generally. It's really annoying. But you know, add a little more fire, that'd be good.
I didn't like myself so
Yeah,
much.
I mean, I work for a company called Hate Brand Goods. For
Right.
God's sake, you think I should have in that time?
Right.
Should have rubbed off, but you know, you do feed on that, and you know, that was one of the things, you know, with working with Matt, which I was so thankful for, is that, and you know, a lot of people said this when we were working together, and like they'd come to the booth and stuff and say like, I'm really glad you guys put a name to that.
Yes.
That feeling.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he did. The first time, I was a guinea pig for the first training lab book. And that was not
He
coincidentally.
sent it to me too when it first came out. He
Yeah.
was like, "Hey, check this out," and I read it. And I was like, "This is everything you need."
Yeah,
you know,
it does nothing wrong.
No.
Like it's fantastic.
Totally need this.
But you know, it was so cool to have somebody put a name to that feeling of when it's your third wob throw, the stuff you have to say to yourself.
Right.
The things
right.
you have to remind yourself of.
Yep.
And they're not good things.
Right.
You know, it's a well that you have to go to that you shouldn't go to all the time.
Yeah.
And but to have a name for that, and to have all of a sudden people come out of the woodwork and say, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Like,
and getting it tattooed on themselves, which is
Yeah.
amazing.
No, it was very cool to see that happen. But I definitely fed on that a lot, and I think it was just cool to have something, a camaraderie with people, and it made you feel more normal.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
to like,
yeah. I'm not
oh,
the only maniac.
Like, oh, everybody's calling themselves a pussy before they
Right.
throw? Oh, okay. Oh, fine. I'm not a weirdo then. I'm not a
When
maniac.
I'm doing a hard conditioning workout, especially, the amount of anti-mark shit that's going through my head every time I stop and put my hands on my hips is, my God. I mean, it's constant. You're a pussy. What the fuck is wrong with you? Do another rep, you know? And it's just, but that's how I've always gone.
Probably why I didn't like Zolg. You're thinking of him in those moments.
But that's where I was, you know. I'm in this dark, dank garage at the time, training all winter long. It's 20 degrees below zero, and I'm just hating on every person who's just a couple rows ahead of me. And when I would have beat them, I would have moved up to the next guys to hate, you know.
Oh yeah.
That's just the way I
Who's next in
work.
line?
Right.
My, you know, I talked about this on an older episode of my podcast, and like, one of the places I went to for the well for a long time was my daughter, who's 6 now. When she was almost 2, she fell in our house playing with my son, and she busted her chin open, bad, like it opened up.
Yeah.
And I was home alone. The wife was away at work, and so I had to scramble and like have somebody watch our older boy and like take her to the children's hospital and everything like that. You know, she's screaming, I'm holding blood and everything like that, and like it was just awful. You
Yeah.
know, no parent likes that.
No,
you know,
no,
I'm an
right.
experienced parent at this point, but it still sucks a lot. And so I grab her, I take her to the hospital, and you know, we're talking to the doctors and everything like that, and they're going to come in and they're just going to try to close it right there and do stitches and everything, and do like, you know, do sort of a procedural on her to like procedural sedation, not full on, but just to get her kind of
Calm down and
Well, kids have this cool thing that happens sometimes, which is called a, God, what is it called? It's basically, I'm getting the word wrong, but it's like an inverse reaction to the drug. Like sometimes you give a kid Benadryl to get them to sleep and makes them more active.
Right.
She had a paradoxical, that's what it was, paradoxical reaction to the drug. I can't remember what it was. That might have been Versed, I can't remember. But it made her more fired up and more tense and more
Yeah.
crazy. And I had to hold her on my chest.
Yeah.
And so long story short is, while they're doing the stitches, I'm laying on a hospital bed with my 20-month-old on my chest,
God.
screaming while they're doing stitches, fully
Yeah.
aware of what's going on, screaming, "Daddy, Daddy, no, 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 no." I'm tearing up right now talking about
right.
it. But God, just, and her like just wanting it to stop, and no, 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 and I can't do anything because I have to do the right thing. But hearing that,
Right.
that moment where I felt completely powerless to stop something from hurting her, that's the well I go to. I went to for a while. I don't really anymore. I don't have a need to. But that's the well I would go to. Dude, what the fuck is wrong with me? Why would I do that on purpose? I would go back and find that moment of feeling completely powerless to help somebody that I loved.
Yeah.
Even though it's like, it's a healthy situation. But that feeling, like, that's, I don't know, it's a gross place to go to get there, but it works sometimes.
It is, but it's you're delving up the most emotional thing you could possibly have gone through in order to produce results that you need to get to. And
Right.
what else? You might as well have used that experience for good.
Yeah, and then hopefully I do in the future. You
Right.
know, like it's might as well, and again, it's Is using it for a max effort deadlift the best use for it? I don't know, but it sure does work.
Yeah, right.
Like, it sure gets me somewhere.
Yeah.
Now, you can't go to the well too many times.
Sure, it dilutes it.
Yeah, and then you're spending a lot more time in that well than you probably need to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to balance that out with being positive.
And the thing about it is if you have that, you should never go to it during practice. That's
No,
another thing for these
no,
amateurs,
God.
you know?
What are you
should
doing?
Never. I'm the same way with people that I lift with. There's no psych up. There's no going to the dark place. You're there to train, so you can put that together later. But every time you go to that, you're expending so much energy and power for something that doesn't matter. What matters is when you get to the field. So,
Right.
you know, I used to like range throwing. So if I was I threw 44 feet in the heavyweight, so I'd put the line out at 40. And how easily could I throw over 40? And just
Bucket
do it
throwing.
like, just fucking around, doing negative thoughts in my head, like, well, what if my ankle breaks when I do this throw? You know, then just seeing how easily I could throw it over 40, you know?
Yeah, and that's practice.
Right.
There's such,
Right.
like, practice is not, and you know, I've got friends that are throwers I make fun of for the way they practice.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, practice with the air quotes here, because they'll go out, they'll get a little bit warm, and they'll just throw as hard as they can for an hour. It's not practice.
It's like guys sparring in the gym and trying to kill each other.
Yeah.
You
What
know?
are you getting out of that?
Right. Except for
Like-
more head trauma.
Right. Practice looks, well, again, I go back to this. Practice looks the same across any discipline, across anything. If you look at it long enough, you know, in this last seminar I did with Spencer, I went to people around the room and asked them what sport they came from. Different sports all over the place. Boxing, wrestling, football, all these, and asked, what does your practice look like? We'd have them all run through it. And then you break apart the fun, like you really look at it, how practice is built. You're breaking things apart. You're breaking them into pieces.
Yeah.
You're slowing them down.
Yes.
You're drilling the little parts of them. Then you start putting pieces of them back together. Variations was what I call it when I coach throwers. You vary them, like in baseball. It's like, hey, we're just going to work on the pitcher to first with ground balls on this side of the infield.
Right.
That's all we're going to do. We're doing that variation of a game. That's all we're going to do.
Yep.
You do your variations, and then you put it back together, and you start hitting the full thing, what it is. You compete or you scrimmage, whatever it is, and you add intensity slowly.
Yep. And you're piecing those things together. This move with this move with this move with this move, and all of a sudden you're competing.
Right. That's practice.
Yeah.
That's how practice is done. If you just want to go out and throw, just be honest with yourself.
Sure.
Like, I want to hit this. I want to motherfuck a couple of these so I can hit a number that I want to hit.
Yeah.
Be honest with yourself.
Yep.
Just make it your own little
And
competition.
that's an ego stroke. That's just, I can hit 36 feet whenever I want to. Well, okay, yeah, but that's fine, but you might not ever hit 40.
Right.
Because you're just going to burn yourself out and not learn anything.
Yeah. If 36 is your PR, don't go out trying to throw your PR.
Right.
Go out try to throw 85% of your PR.
Right.
Over and over and over and over and over again. And then all of a sudden, that 40 will show up.
See, but that's the kind of stuff. So when you wrote your book, I was kind of peripherally aware of you through Matt, and I wasn't following the sport at all, so I didn't know what was going on. But I knew that you'd won a national championship, which in my book gives you qualifications, certain qualifications. You took some heat.
Sure.
And I don't know if you took some heat because you were a lightweight or you were younger, but all of a sudden there was some bias why you couldn't write a book.
Sure.
Now, having this conversation for you for the last, 47 minutes we've been doing this, there is a vast amount of knowledge, not just in the technique, but in the mindset that's going to be able to get you to use that technique effectively.
Sure.
Why do you think there was that backlash towards you? And it wasn't everybody, but it was some shitty comments. Because I remember me and Matt texting back and forth, and I'm like, well, what's going on with this? And he really couldn't figure out either. And I remember him jumping in, with both feet, like, fuck you. This guy knows what he's talking about, which is odd for him.
I'll appreciate to the ends of the earth, because I would never ask, guys like Spencer and Matt to do that. I would never ask them to, but they didn't need to be asked. They were happy to. It's an interesting question. I've had a couple of years to think about it. Now, interestingly, starting at the end of this, I had a conversation with my wife maybe 2 days ago, and I said, a couple of years ago, when I first put that book out, I guess it's been a couple of years now, I told her about all the stuff you talked about. And I said, but for the last year, none of it's happening anymore.
Right.
And even the people that had that issue, I talk to them and I see them and everything's cool. And we talk shop. And I think obviously, time heals all things, whatever, but I think some of it is this. I had, because of the time that I worked with Matt, I had a bigger platform than other people, just because of being in that, near that spotlight of Matt. Matt's a dynamo. He's a personality that's going to get found and going to get seen. And just by exposure, I think some of that spilled over onto me. And there's a feeling of undeservedness because I wasn't the level of thrower that Matt was, or the level of thrower that you were. I wasn't the level of thrower that the people that had put out the books thus far had been.
Right.
Plain and simple.
Right.
Anybody that had written a book on the Highland Games had done it professionally, and they'd been, they'd put up the pro numbers, and
There's like 3 people at the time, I think.
Right. And
Bukowski and Dan and Matt, I think, were the major ones.
It's not a long list, right?
Right.
And Pekowski's book isn't good because he's a pro. Mindy's book isn't, like Mindy and Mike's book isn't good because they're pros. It's good because they understand throwing and how to coach it.
Very well, yes. Yep.
So I think some of it came from that. I think some of it came from the perception. It's funny because you said the younger thing, and this is another thing that came up with my wife, is that, and it's funny because this was a response that Spencer gave on my behalf to somebody once when they were talking, saying that kind of stuff. I think there was a perception of me being a younger guy because I was all over social media.
Yeah.
I'm not shy about putting what I know or what I'm working on out there.
Right.
Like, and if I'm wrong, I'm totally down to talk about that.
Yeah.
If it sucks, talk to me. It's cool. Let's do that. I could be totally wrong. But there's that perception. But like I said at one point, it was like last year, it was like, I don't know if they realize I'm 38 with a mortgage and 3 kids.
Right.
Like I'm not some millennial kid that's like, I'm not like trying to make it as a graphic designer in Manhattan when I'm 22. Like I'm just,
it's a lot of life experience there.
Like, and like and again, like I think some of it is that, but again, the lightweight thing probably does play into it. I think there is that bias in this sport that this is a big man's sport, and I get it. I'm never going to say no, like lightweight should get the same shine. No, they shouldn't. You go to the circus to see the elephants.
Yeah.
Like you do, like that. So watching guys under 200 pounds, it has a certain appeal to it, and I'm glad that it's reached the level that it has for us to have championships, world and national championships, and have crowds that cheer. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But I'm never going to fault anybody for wanting to watch the big guys instead.
Yeah. Right.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I fucking watch the big guys.
No, I understand the lightweight class a lot more than I do now. I looked at it before as, these guys dieting down, and it's not that. Some of these guys are never going to be 200 pounds.
Yeah.
And they're incredible. I remember Mark Howe, and maybe Mark was over 200 pounds. I don't know when he threw with me, but here was a guy who was technically super, super sharp, but he was never going to win shit.
He's 5'7", 5'8".
Right. So here's a great place for them to do it. And in order to throw the weights and the stones and the hammers as far as you guys are throwing them as lightweights, which are extremely impressive. I think I saw my first lightweight class compete last year in Iowa. It's amazing to me to be able to do it at that light a body weight. When you're chucking a 56 or whatever that far, when you're that light is impressive to me. One of the things I've noticed is, you've got Hate Brand and you've got Throwbros and you've got Refined Savage. The thing that I've noticed is that guys a lot of times in the Highland Games for some reason resent you for making money.
Yes.
Now, you go to a powerlifting meet and Live Large is there. If you set up a booth next to Live Large, good fucking luck.
Seriously.
Live Large is going to dry hump you all over the arena the whole time. But you don't see Live Large in Highland Games. But there's a lot of companies like Live Large in powerlifting. There's a lot of companies like Cerberus and SBD and all these companies in strongman. But there was always this stigma attached to, he wants to make money. What? I'm providing you with a product and a service that's going to help you do better in your sport. And my time is valuable, and I'm going to charge you for that time.
Yes.
And it was one of the things that Matt warned me about when I started doing apparel. And I'm guaranteeing you got it, and I'm guaranteeing he got it, was as soon as you put it out there, everybody wants one for free.
Absolutely.
And if you do that for anybody, you're going to be out of business really soon.
That's right. And the people that love it and the people that understand it will never ask you for anything.
You're right.
They'll pay full price.
You're right.
I got people that are into what we're doing with Throwbros, and they refuse discounts. They
Right.
won't take handouts. Say, no, I like what you guys do, and I want to support you.
Yeah.
That's the key right there. So in there are those core people that do that. But you're right, there is a strange backlash. And I think when you combine all the other factors that I talked about, why I may have gotten a little bit of backlash from a few people, that's probably the icing on the cake, is that I'm charging $20 for a book.
Right.
That my time is valuable. That was time that I didn't spend with my children, or
Right.
didn't spend on my other business. I didn't spend and that is, just like you talked about, it's a lifetime of expertise. Am I the greatest thrower on earth? No, I'm not. But is Bill Belichick the greatest quarterback
Right,
on earth?
right,
No, he's
right.
not. And I'm not Bill Belichick. I'm just making an
Right,
extreme,
I understand what you're
an
saying.
extreme example there. But there's a certain, to me, I've said time and time again, I truly believe, having been coached by great coaches and bad coaches, and some were good athletes, some were bad athletes, some are not athletes, that coaching is a different skill than the sport.
Yes.
Coaching is a different skill. Some people can coach anything. That's what I aspire to be like. That's what I want to be like. I want to be somebody that can see the way the human body works in anything.
Break it down, put
Right.
it into parts.
And that's why I like so many different physical endeavors. But there are some people that are just so great at understanding a sport, a single activity or movement in and out, that you can't not listen to them. Like, well, what titles have you won? Who fucking cares?
Right.
If you don't want. I'm stealing this from Matt because it's such a great thing where he says, like, you don't want Usain Bolt to be your sprinting coach.
Yeah. No.
Just go faster.
You want the old guy who studied this his whole life to be your sprinter,
Right.
who was probably like straining to make a national team,
Probably, maybe, hopefully ran 10.
doing anything he could do to get there.
Yeah, and that's the kind of stuff you want. Sometimes you want grinders as a coach.
Yeah.
You want the people that had to grind through and learn that stuff as they went. So, that probably the money thing certainly has something to do with it, and you can't deny that. I think what I've been so happy about with Throwbros, and I think maybe the experience of Hate Brand, having worked with Matt for all those years, and just other friends that are trying, like yourself, that are trying to provide, but also make sure that your expenses are covered.
Right.
The lesson that we learned and the message that I get out first and foremost with Throwbros is that like, we're going to provide things that you need for the games, or
Right.
that you want for the games, like tape, tacky, chalk, blades, implements, books, all the stuff. You're going
Right.
to get that from us. You can buy that from us.
One-stop shopping for Highland Games.
Correct. I know that you can run up the street to the sporting goods store and get tape and chalk. I know that. I'm aware of that. I know that you can go buy the books on Amazon. I know that. I'm aware of that. But if you give this money, or if you use your money with this company, it is going to go back to the Highland Games.
Right.
That's why we're here.
Right.
Like, Aaron and I are both Highland Games athletes. That's why I'm sitting here with you in Columbus,
Right.
because that's what sponsors this game. That's where that money went. That's
Right.
going into the pockets of pros. That's going into getting athletes here. That's going into making this a spectacle, getting the
Yes.
implements built. It's going back into the sport. So get your tape and chalk wherever you want. But I entreat everybody, if you want it to go back into the sport that you love and give us a chance to build it,
Right.
please, please buy our fine goods,
Yeah.
is what I'm saying.
Well, we talked about that before, that I love the creative aspect of coming up with apparel. But the main point about it is, buy these t-shirts and buy these hats because you love them, but also because it's going to afford me the opportunity to travel down to Columbus for the third week in a row and interview people that you want to listen to on the show.
Right.
And that's and hopefully you're getting a twofer. You're getting a high quality implement or a high quality piece of apparel, and you're getting a usable resource that's going to help you throw further.
Right, you're not coming at people with your hand out.
Exactly.
Saying like, hey, help me do this thing that I love.
Right.
Like, no, I'm going to do some work for you.
Right.
Please, how disgusting would you feel if you said to people like, hey, I love podcasting, can you donate some money to me? You're not that guy. You don't
No,
have that in your
yeah.
DNA. You feel like you need to work,
Right.
you need to create, or you need to like actually physically work on something, create it, and then get paid.
Yeah.
Like, have somebody give their hard-earned money for that.
Yeah.
Because you've been on the other side for too long.
Yeah.
To feel like there are things that I want to support. Like, I'm going to wear Hate Brand goods till the day I die.
Sure.
Whether I work there
Yep.
or not. I'm going to wear that stuff till the day I die.
I've got a Throwbros hat and a Hate Brand hat
Right.
in my closet right now.
Right.
You know?
Like, I'm going to wear that till the day I die. Not because I need shirts.
Right.
I'm fine. I can get shirts at Target. Like, I can go to all those places. That's not what it's about. I believe in that.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
there's nothing left behind. Like, Target's not going to care.
Right.
Like Walmart's not going to care. There's no legacy. They don't have to care. That's they provide goods and services. That's fine. They don't have to. But there's a chance that those dollars that I put forward into that thing that I'm a part of, whether it's Throwbros, whether it's Refined Savage, Hate Brand, any of the companies, it could be even as big as Rogue. I don't even care. But if they're doing something you believe in,
Yes.
that's a chance for legacy. That's a chance to say, like, I'm never going to have the stage that this company does because I don't have that talent, I don't have that capability, I don't have that time to do it.
Yeah.
But I believe in strongman, I believe in Highland Games, I believe in CrossFit, I believe in all these different modes of training. So if I give my money to these companies that are supporting them, I get to be part of that legacy.
Yes.
I know that's really romantic sounding, but I truly, truly believe that when you use your hard-earned money to do that, like that's you saying, like that's like I believe in the power of that sport. I believe in the power of this discipline, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get it bigger and do that. And God bless companies like Rogue. God bless companies like Elite FTS. You know, that take that and say like, okay, now we're taking it worldwide.
Sure.
I love it. That's the goal.
And I think that's the reason I think that's the reason why you don't have animosity between the companies. So that rising tide raises all boats, you know. So, you know, when I bought the Throwbros hat, I had to take a picture with it on, you know, to support you guys.
Yeah.
The same thing I do for Matt. And I think everybody just comes together. I texted Matt the other day because this was fucking crazy. So I dropped the shirt I'm wearing, and I found out how to do one of those 6-picture things on Instagram.
Nice, yes.
So I put it up. I got all excited. I downloaded the app. I put it up at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm looking through my feed, and he did the same goddamn thing with his shirt. And I'm like, oh my god, he thinks I copied him. So I'm like, okay, what time did I put it up? As opposed to what time did he put it up? I'm like, okay, so mine was out first. So I'm gonna text him and let him know that I wasn't trying to fuck with him. You know,
me and some thrower buddies saw that happen. We're like, which one went first?
Yep.
Who did
so
that?
I texted him, I go, how the fuck did we do this on the same day? He's like, I guess we're just brilliant.
Just great minds.
Yeah.
But you know, the funny thing is, like, probably y'all were one of 50,000 companies that did that week.
We just happened to be all in the same board.
That week.
And the thing of it is there's I think all of our companies have that same desire in mind. We've all been in the mud. We've all gotten games T-shirts that felt like you were wearing a potato sack by the end of the games. You know,
the old Gildan trash bag.
Exactly.
Shirt. Yeah.
So you look at that, and you try to put out stuff that people want to wear in competitions. You know, and look good. And you know, every person who posts a picture of our stuff, I repost it, and it's genuine gratitude, because it's like, how fucking cool is that guy busted his ass, you know, and then took that $29 and bought one of our pieces of equipment, you know, or one of our shirts, you know?
Right? Like, it genuinely feels good. Like, right. I'm aware that selling things to Highland Games athletes is never going to make me a millionaire.
No, it's a very small market.
Like, it's a very small market. But that's what you do it for, man. Like, now, do I love the attention? Yes. I'm never going to lie about that. Like, I didn't start doing Highland Games and all this stuff so people wouldn't notice.
Exactly.
I like it. I enjoy the attention. I enjoy that. But, man, the older I get, and it's straight dad stuff, like, the idea of contributing to something that enables another person, to see somebody else take what you were able to provide and run with it. Yeah. Like, we had somebody that reposted. It just seems like a simple little thing. But it's somebody that was throwing homemade implements.
Yeah.
Like he was throwing, you know, I think he had done the weights on the pipe or whatever, or it was like the concrete or whatever. Yep. You know, that we all tried to do. And you know, he's throwing. He had, you know, certain numbers thrown with it. He was just throwing the 28 to learn, and he bought one of our 28s. And he went out and immediately just threw immensely much further than he ever had, and he felt like he looked better. And if you watch the videos, like, he legitimately, like, from one to the next, he looked better throwing the real implement, and he was just high on the sport at that point. He's like, oh my God, I mean, maybe he's only throwing 50 feet or 45 feet with it. If that doesn't matter. Right. Like, if he went from throwing 35 feet to 45 feet and it was with our implement, holy shit, dude, I was like, I stand up and I was pumping my fist. I showed my wife. I was like, look, he got our implement. And he's like, you can't replace that. You
can't fake it. People realize when that's not genuine. You know.
And I was like, oh, I'm so excited for you. Like, no, you don't get it, man, because I was there. Right. Like, I was in my backyard throwing you know, the standard size, like, 1.5 inch hole fucking.
that's the reason why you don't see a powerlifting brand making it big in Highland Games, or why I go to a powerlifting meet and don't sell as well, because that's not me. I've never been in a bench shirt. I don't get that. I support it. It's awesome. I love it. We work with powerlifters, but it's they're going to support the people that have been in the mud with them. And so are we.
And that's your core. That's the the idea is, and this is something again that has happened and did happen with Hate Brand Goods while I was there with Matt, is that the core, if you build that core really, really strong, the people that are down no matter what, and you never lie to them, and you make things that they want, and you make things you believe in, you tell them the truth about everything along the way, you expose the process, you're honest. I've said be honest 4 different ways, but that's how important it is. If you build that core, it's probably not going to grow, like you're not going to grow by the multitudes and the millions.
Right.
But what's going to happen is you're going to have that core group of, let's say, 1,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
Core group of 1,000 people that are down no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Those people get seen.
Yeah.
And people want to be part of that.
Yeah.
They see something real and they want to be part of it. That's why nobody gets fired up about, like, again, to a big box chain store. Nobody's looking at, nobody's going to the Wendy's account and being like, what are they doing now?
Yeah,
like,
right.
it's just not that way, and that's not what they're built for. But these companies that we're starting are built around that idea, like, hey, if you get this message, we want you in.
Yeah.
We want you in the club. If you don't, spend your money elsewhere, that's fine.
And I look at it the same way, and just like you're explaining, I look at it being in this business the same way as craft brewers, or guys who have their own beard care company, or guys that are making badass knives on anvils in their garage. It's just, this is what I can do, and I'm going to make the best quality product ever. And maybe I'm not going to make the biggest markup on this shit because I just don't have the guts to put it out there and say you have to pay $45 for a T-shirt. But
right.
This is what I do, and you like it, great. If not, I understand, but you can be part of that movement.
Yeah, and this is the tale as old as time, man. It's one of those fundamental drives, I really do believe. Like, it's fundamental drive, just like to provide for, to hunt, to provide, to protect, to nurture. Like, it's part of those things that's a part of. There's the reason that there's almost 7 billion of us in this world is that we work pretty well together.
Sure.
Just all evidence to the contrary.
Give or take, yeah.
We work pretty well together as a species. And somebody that can create something, provide it, and then exchange that's super rewarding to you as the person making it. To get something, to have something and make it that's like you created, that came out of your mind, out of the ether, that somebody wants, that's a fundamental drive. I'm convinced that's something that people want. They want to provide for one another. They want to build alliances that way.
Yeah.
That's a way of saying, like, hey, I made this, I want you to have it. And then there's a fair exchange. I'm telling you, there's something that tickles you, that tickles me, and every other person, like, somewhere very fundamentally about when we get to do that. We get to put something out that is so, like, I made that happen.
And I'm sure you have those customers, and I've got a few of them that no matter what you put out, they buy.
Yes.
As soon as it's out, boom, the order comes in. It's like, maybe you've never met them before, it's just...
I met one of them today at the Throwbros
That's
table.
awesome.
Her name's Molly.
Yeah.
She is, like, every time something comes, there's Molly's name, pops up every time. I got to bring her hat that she ordered. She ordered one of the straw hats. I got to hand it to her in person.
Yeah.
Fucking
That's great.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Worth every penny to get here just for that.
Yeah.
No, it's a very cool experience, man. Like, that's, the Arnold is, we go back to, it's a carnival, it's a sideshow, and there's a lot of weirdness, and there's a lot of things that, like, we don't get, you and I don't get, and there's a lot of things there's things going on that we're not, like, there's clubs we're not in here.
Sure,
basically.
right.
Like, there's a lot going on that we don't care about. But it's just a chance to sit down in a place where people are going to know where you are, and there's a good chance you get to see the people on the other end.
Yeah.
You get to see the people that are buying it. That's such a
Which
cool
is
thing.
the reason why I go to shows to begin with. So I go to a lot of strongman shows and set up booths. And, I mean, I'll sell a good number of shirts and hats, but the coolest part about it is actually getting to meet these people who sit, because I can't tell you how many times someone has sent me an Instagram post, and I've talked to them 100 times, but I've never seen them in person. I'd walk right by them on the street and wouldn't know, because in their Instagram post they're lifting a giant stone and their hat's on backwards. It's like, I don't know who the fuck you are. But I know your name, and I know you bought stuff from me, and I know you're digging the show, and But that's the Arnold too. I mean, that's just, it's a conglomeration of vendors and another thing that got me is last year I went to the Highland Games last year and then walked across the place to the Haight booth and to the Norris booth, which were right next to each other. And it was hard to get near either one of those two. And Andy does a great job at Norris too. But there were so many booths in between there that have just spent $7,000 to have a booth space and nobody's there. Because there's no skin in the game from them at all.
Yeah,
they haven't done anything to
there's
get
companies
out.
every year that I see is like, I've never heard of that company.
No.
I don't think I ever will again. Like,
And the shirts have a big muscle guy on them flexing, and it's like,
or they like, or they'll like drop, they'll drop however much money for Jay Cutler to put their shit on and pose with it.
Right.
He doesn't know who those people are.
Right.
He just got it from his agent.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, cool, man. Yeah, it's a weird show, man. Like, and every year I go through this crisis of like, do I need to be there?
Yeah.
But it's the part that we talked about where I get to actually see all the people that interact with the brand, whether it was Hate Brand, now it's Throwbros, just to see those people in person. And fuck, man, I also, tomorrow, I get the front row seats to watch the absolute best Highland Games athletes in the world throw.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I get to hang out with them when they throw.
Yeah.
Like, look, I've been doing this a long time. I'm legitimate, I'm friends with these guys, not just like, like marriages of convenience kind of business stuff. Like, I'm friends with them. Like, I'm hanging at their houses. Our kids play together and stuff. Like, there's still, no matter how much I try to get away from it, there's still a little bit of fan in me. No matter what.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Like, a big throw is a big throw to me.
Yep.
And if it's done by one of my buddies, even better. But, I like watching them do it, man.
Yeah.
I like watching how fast Nate turns the hammer.
Right.
Like, it's never not going to be cool to me. Like, I like watching Spencer throw sheaf through the roof.
Yep.
I enjoy that. I like watching Liv just ascend to probably become the greatest woman thrower ever. I think she's got a really, really good shot.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, that's my buddy, but also I'm a fan. I'm just a fan of the sport, and that's not going to go away. And I think that's okay. I think it's okay to play it and to be a fan at the same time. In fact, I'd say it's a big part of continuing to love it.
Well, exactly. So I don't think you can love it if you're not a fan, and I mean, when I was throwing, guys like Matt Sanford and before him, like when Jim McGoldrick would come around, man, I was a huge fan. I remember sitting next to Jim McGoldrick at the East Coast Championships, and it was just like, holy shit, I'm sitting next to the Big Chief. This is crazy. But I think
I got
that's
hammer
an
coached
important
from
part.
Larry Brock once. It was the greatest day of my life.
Right.
Fantastic.
He tell you just have no muscle at all in your upper body.
Just look real weird and don't bench.
That's right. Yeah.
Just wind it like nobody else on the planet and then never bench.
Larry didn't give a shit. So if the field was tight, if there was people hanging on the hammer cage, he just didn't give a fuck. He was going to throw as hard as he could. And if something bad happened, nothing ever bad happened to him, but he didn't care.
You paid me to throw up and throw it far. Show up and throw it far. So here I am.
He was the consummate pro, man. He was out there to make as much money as humanly possible and spend the least amount of money as humanly possible while he was at the competition.
I love it, man. Like that's such a testament to the sport, and that like this is like it's seriously like the sport at the pro level is just like some weird cheat that you get paid for.
It's you're
so
getting
strange.
paid to go on a road trip with your buddies every weekend.
Yeah.
All right.
Larry does a great job on the mic now too. He does a couple of the East Coast games. He's a blast on the microphone, man.
Yeah.
He's really fun. Just a guy that's literally seen everything at that point.
Oh yeah, he's been everywhere, seen everything, and
that's a dude you want running commentary right there.
Yeah, and those, Larry was the original entrepreneur of the sport. He used to have he would sell Larry Brock's Magic Tacky and hammer blades. And that was his thing. And everyone gave him shit too.
Right? How dare you?
Yeah.
Make your own. It's like I don't know how to make blades.
Exactly.
What do you want me to do?
I'm gonna make tacky in my kitchen. And blow up like Ryan Vieira did.
Right.
I'm not gonna do that.
It's like if you have any designs on making your own tacky, I'm totally. I support it, and
I don't. You should not make your own tacky.
You'd think, I'm too biased to say that, but no, if you should go for it, you should try it. Try it once and see if you want to do it over and over again.
I would be scared to death. I'd be scared to death. There's no way. It is so volatile.
The things that we've had to figure out to make it in mass like we do, and to put out the size of badges that we do and everything like that, just just get it from wherever you're going to get it.
Yeah.
Man, it's because there's a really high probability you blow yourself up.
It really is.
Or you just breathe something in
Yeah.
and damage your sinuses in your nose forever. Like
Ryan set himself on fire in Kurt Pauley's kitchen.
That sounds
making
about right.
it. Yep.
That sounds about right.
Arms, you see him now. He's got burns all over his arms from where it blew up on him, and
yeah, just let us light ourselves on fire.
Yep,
You guys
exactly.
From us.
Leave it to Throwbros. They can do.
Aaron's got no hair anyway. It'll just burn off him anyway. It's fine.
We can't remember where we were busting Aaron's balls. Oh, Jeremy Futrell was. We were in Virginia, and
is that where he bombed on Wob?
Well, Aaron was fucking with him or something, and he was texting through the bar or something, and he's like, "That's it, I'm denouncing Throwbros."
Denouncing.
He was denouncing him in the bar because Aaron was fucking with him, which was great. So
Throwbros is banned.
Right, no more.
Well, that's good. I'm glad Aaron's putting the word out for us. Doing
He's
good
back
work.
though. I've seen him. He's back. He's back on board the train. So
Good.
we want him back. So.
Glad he hasn't forsaken us.
Hey, I'm gonna let you get back to the Arnold. You've had your back to everything that's been going on, but we've had Eddie Hall.
I saw Eddie skulking around.
Yeah, Bill Linden and Magnus Magnuson and Thor's entourage just walked through. So.
Yeah, but I got to look at you the whole time.
Oh
so
yeah,
I
that was.
to watch,
yeah,
man.
geez, I got Liv and Spencer, or maybe just Spencer, whoever. I don't know if Liv will be done throwing by now, but we got them next, and we'll go from there. And I really, I wish you luck. I think having met you, you're a legitimate, a genuine dude who I hope sells a shitload of products to people who need him.
I say the exact same back to you, man. I really appreciate what you're doing, and I love. We didn't get into it a whole lot, but I really like the idea that you are exploring lots of avenues of manhood. That you're exploring avenues of manhood. The kind of adventures that you can have as a modern man, and just what's available for people out there. I think it's a very cool thing to look at. I spend a lot of time trying to redefine the role of what dad is.
Yes,
I spend a lot of time trying to do that. And I don't want to be an old fuddy-duddy. I don't want to be the guy that's happy to rock the New Balance Monarchs and mow the lawn.
Right.
Like, trust me, I'll do that. I'm fine with it. Like, that's a good part of being a dad. But I love what you're doing is because you're bringing on people that are models of men to admire, men and women to admire.
That's what I like about the podcast is I haven't met anybody yet that I've interviewed, and most of the people like you. I said the way we got together is I liked your Instagram page,
right?
And I started and I sit there and stalk people for months before I ask them to come on, and I think it's good for people to see people out there who like yourself. We're a Highland Games athlete, and you're posting pictures of your wife and kids and how much you love them, and you're taking them hunting, and you're doing Muay Thai, and you're doing all this stuff, and there's worth in that. There's worth in all those things. It's not just hitting the gym and then hitting the field. And,
no.
And the cool thing about it is that your kids are going to get to grow up and have stories about you as a man.
Yeah, and that means a lot to me. It really does, even just to hear that said, because you just want to have, you want the kid to have a sense of their own history,
right? What
they come from, what their legacy might be, what they may have a leg up in, what they may not, or what they have experience with and what they don't. And that's why, again, I go back to I really believe like the concept of the refined savage and the driving force behind the podcast. It speaks to me so much. And it keeps getting filled with people that I want my son and my daughters to listen to, and the kind of people, not just the big celebrities, not just the faces, the names, not just who they find on YouTube, but people that have found a niche, or people that have found a philosophy or found something to where they can do something that matters, even in the smallest way.
Right.
Like, and they can, they've done it through hard work, and they've done it through repetition, and they've done it through grind.
Yeah.
Like, being born into it, fuck that. Like, it's great if you are, but do something with it.
Yeah, you have these John Jones characters who are just put on this earth to beat the shit out of people, but screw up every chance they get because they haven't had to struggle like everybody else.
There's not a struggle in there. And like, I love that idea. I love the concept of the refined savage. I love the idea that, again, make savage the body. Like, I love that idea that, you can be dangerous.
Yeah.
But you can also be thoughtful.
Yes.
And that's something that, that's big for a 10-year-old boy to figure out. I get it. But if I can model that, and I can show him people like you, and I can show him people to where, like, look, show him people like Spencer. He loves Spencer. My son adores Spencer. He thinks he's the greatest in the world. And if I can show him those people, that's like you said, those are stories, and that's such a great model for them to build on. So I thank you for doing what you do.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm having a lot of fun having you guys on. Now you guys are down in Austin, right?
I am.
Close?
Yeah, I'm right by Austin.
See, I'm gonna come down to you next time and do this, because Austin is like one of my top 10 cities on the planet.
Dude, I'll show you around a little bit. It's
Austin
fun,
and Key West and New Orleans and Portland and Calgary, these places that are filled with artsy weirdos in the middle of these places that they shouldn't be.
Right,
so,
where there's tons of big like industry like tech and all, so like it's weird.
Right,
yeah.
You know, in Texas you have Austin that's so artsy and so musical and so cool, and Key West in redneck heaven down there at the tip of Florida. You know, just these places where, you know, you can walk down the street with a beer and people go, oh, it's fucking Austin. I don't, you know, whatever. You know?
Yeah. There's definitely there's definitely a mind your own vibe in Texas.
Yeah.
And overall, which is nice, but especially in Austin, there's just a lot of that, man. It literally does take all kinds down there, and it's a weird little island in the middle of Texas for sure. But yeah, man, come down. I'll show you the best I can. Like, again, you know, you're dealing with another old dude. I'm not gonna know all the cool.
Well, don't take me to any clubs.
I'm pretty sure they'd know not to let us in at that point. It's like, look, sir, there's a pub down the street.
Right, just get out of here.
There's a pub with no sign down the street.
Right.
Just go in there where you belong.
You and your Chuck Taylors.
They're comfortable. Leave me alone.
Right. Oh, all right. Well, I'm going to let you go. Get back to your booth, and I really appreciate you coming on, and we'll do this again sometime.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, brother. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to the show, guys. Next week on the show, we have Kibwe and Crystal Johnson. If you don't know Kibwe is a two-time Olympian, and Crystal was a incredible hammer thrower in her own right. We went down to St. Petersburg, Florida, and got to talk to them, and it was a great conversation. I think you guys are going to dig this. Thanks for listening to this podcast with Mike Beech. If you are out there and in search of tacky or chalk or throwing towels or cool throwing gear for the Highland Games, make sure you give Throwbros a shout out and give them some love. Thanks, guys.